Laura, no. That's not cute.
No, es que me da cosa porque...
Ay, no. No creo que lo tenga. Mentira.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
We have some technical difficulties, so we're going to do it together.
Yeah.
So that's why we're wearing masks. Hopefully you can hear us. So give us just a few minutes so people can come in, and we will get started in 3 minutes. So just be patient with us. Okay, great. We'll start in a couple minutes. We're just getting prepared. Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
So the internet wasn't working great, so we're going to do the conversation together.
More intimate, I
More
guess.
intimate, definitely. So here we are. I'm actually going to just start and briefly introduce Bakehouse and the program, and then we can get started with the good stuff. So welcome to our virtual program in conversation with Amanda Linares, presented by Bakehouse Art Complex. Thank you for joining us. My name is Laura Novoa, and I'm the Curatorial and Public Programs Associate here at the Bakehouse Art Complex. The Bakehouse is a nonprofit organization founded in 1985 by artists for artists in a formal industrial Art Deco era bakery. It provides studio residencies, infrastructure, and community to over 60 local artists. Our mission is to address the need for affordable live work, and workspaces for artists in Miami's urban core. For the ongoing and critical support we receive, the Bakehouse would like to thank its private and public sponsors, including the Knight Foundation, the Perez Family Foundation through Crearte, and the Miami Foundation, Miami-Dade County and the Department of Cultural Affairs, and the State of Florida and its Division of Cultural Affairs. I would like to thank the Wiley Family Foundation, Agriman LLP as well. I am grateful to Bakehouse's Executive Director, Kathy Leff, and my colleague, Ricardo Moore. I'm also very grateful to artist and friend, Amanda Linares, who has allowed me to bug her countless times and indulge me with many conversations about her work and her practice. And before we begin the program, we're going to show 3 short videos of the artist books that accompany Amanda's installation between Islands and Peninsulas. This will be helpful, particularly for those of you that have not been able to see the installation in person. So you have a better understanding of what they look like and how they're constructed. So please feel free to ask questions or share comments in the chat box to the right-hand side of the screen. And once again, thank you for joining us tonight. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook for information on our future virtual programming and Bakehouse artist updates. So let's get started with these beautiful videos that Amanda has created for us. And Amanda, if you want to kind of talk through the books a little bit while I show them, feel free.
Well, first and foremost, thank you everybody that has tuned in with us for today. I feel like platforms like this one are really good, especially for times like this with COVID. I know a lot of people haven't been able to come here to the Bakehouse for different circumstances, and they haven't been able to see the exhibition. So right now we're gonna give you like a better, view and insight of what the exhibition is about. So we're gonna start with Todo Sigue Igual. This is the book about Cuba with a cover made out of concrete. The pictures we're taking in Cuba, actually. So they're my own archives. And this first pages that you see are actually newsprint. I wanted to have a kind of vintage kind of look to it because, I'm talking about the past. and especially my motherland. The cutouts that you just saw that I flipped, they actually represent like the platform of my house in Cuba. And for this book specifically, I used text from a really well-known movie called Memorias de su Desarrollo, Memories of Underdevelopment, that was actually filmed in released in Cuba in 1969 or 68? 68, yeah. Exactly. So 8 years after the revolution. And they kind of like give this whole idea of what the revolution in Cuba was about.
So that was the first book there. Let me open up the second one.
This one is Agua Salada, salt water, and it's about the sea as a connector and divider for Cuba, the island, and Miami, the peninsula. And it's about the connection that especially a lot of people that live in an island like in Cuba feel connected with the sea, because it's really the only like way, I mean, besides air, of course, because you can like take airplanes now, but it's one of the, you know, more like tangible way that you have in order to cross the island. And it's also a place to like, you know, relax and reflect and meditate and do offerings. For example, here I use the image of Ochun. There's also, of course, a relationship with the sea, with Yamaya, but I chose to choose Ochun because she's the patron of the country, and I feel like it has a lot of relationship with everything for Cubans in there. And then the page in the middle that I flipped that has like this grid is actually a wax paper, as well as the image of the Virgin, kind of like going with this metaphor of like lighting a candle and like making your offerings, blessings. And then for this book, I used text from one of the poems of Jose Marti, the El Apóstol de Cuba. He's a poet and also a hero in my country. And the poem that I use from him, it's called Odio el Mar, I Hate the Sea. And it's one from his free verses, free poems, just to be more specifically.
I love getting to see these videos again.
I feel like a lot of people were very afraid of touching the books.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think it's really good to have a video of the books, because if you're afraid, of course, I guess they kind of work as this, I don't know, like elements of, how can I say, like these deities, let's say, I don't know, because they contain like very like intimate information. I don't know, like, but and some of them look fragile as well. Like the one of some concrete, even though it's like heavy, it kind of looks fragile. I think somehow. Well, let's go to this one. So this one is the one that focuses on Miami. Mm-hmm. So it's about, you know, my arrival to Miami. Mm-hmm. These are pictures that I took once I arrived. So it's like my first explorations in the city, basically. And if you know, pay attention, there are, of course, things that connect to the island. Like one of the pictures I have, it shows this store that actually exists in Cuba as well, La Época. And in the picture, it says Havana and Miami. So there are connections, of course, with the city and Cuba. But again, the book, once it opens completely, there's a certain type of nostalgia and like lost, and where you don't feel that you are at home yet, which is the same way that I felt when I came. I was disoriented, and I wasn't really connecting with the environment around me. So I was trying to look for that connection.
Yeah, and definitely every time that I've confronted the books, I find something new and something different. So it's kind of the viewer's exploration mirrors your personal kind of journey from Cuba to Miami, but also in these specific places. So speaking a little bit about that, could you walk us through your process for Between Islands and Peninsulas? How did you conceive of the installation? How does the current installation kind of vary from your original idea? I know that this was intended to be your BFA.
Yeah.
So your BFA work presentation. So how does it vary from your original idea of how this was going to look?
Well, I don't know if we're going to show the sketches.
No,
Do you
can.
have? Okay. So yeah, I had some sketches that I shared with Laura because she wanted to see more like a visual, concrete idea of like how it was different from what I was thinking. Of course, this was it is actually my BFA, even though I feel like now it's more than that because I finished it not actually in at school because of COVID. I finished it actually here at the Bakehouse Art Complex. So it expanded from its original idea. But yeah, I knew I didn't know exactly that I wanted to talk about my diaspora at the beginning. I was trying to look for a topic that would really talk to me personally. And I felt that once I had the idea of talking about my own diaspora, about immigration, about the Cuban diaspora, I feel that it was a really good moment for me as a student and as an artist to not only close a chapter with school, but also close another chapter in my life, which was, this whole journey about like coming to a new country where you literally feel like you are reborn because you have to learn so many things again. The idea, one of the first books that I really had that came out really easily to my mind was the one from the sea, actually.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. One of the main things of the installation is that I was working with the grid. I'm graduated from graphic design. So I needed to connect graphic design somehow with what I was doing. Since I'm always trying to do something a little bit further from my, let's say, limits, right? I push a lot from myself in this installation, and I wanted to expand the concept of the grid. So in design, you use the grid as a way to organize things, whatever. But I wanted to use more like a grid as a way of mapping, as a way of mapping this journey and creating like a type of geography, right? Like a scattered geography, like how you mentioned in the text. So from there, the whole idea started. I started sketching some things about the table. I knew I wanted the grid on the table, more specifically. Then I incorporated also the concept of the grid on the books. And for example, if you have seen the images, I have two grids. I have one grid in the section of Cuba that is on the table. It's like a very tight and like I'm like literally playing with scale. So the grid is a little bit more tight, like constrained, small, the way that you kind of feel in an environment like in Cuba. And then the one in Miami is a more expanded grid, which is the same way that the books work. So the book in Cuba is like, it feels very heavy, very because of that same feeling. And then the one in Miami, there's more expansion. There's like freedom of movement, right? And then the one in the sea, the table, it wasn't treated, it wasn't laser cut or anything. It's just like the wood itself that actually has this really cute patterns that look like water. I would say it's like the way that the wood came. And for the book in the sea, I actually was working with the dot grid. So if you research a little bit about the grid in history, the dot grid is very connected with the creation of manuscripts. So it has a very religious relationship already. And I wanted to work with that because the sea is something organic. And again, it's a place where you go to meditate. So there's a I feel like there is a very religious connection with it, a very spiritual connection.
Yeah, I feel like some of our viewers, listeners are anticipating a lot of what we're saying, which is great. Because someone asked about just that, like what is the significance of the pegs in Agua Salada and the circular holes in your second book. And you just mentioned it has this religious, spiritual connotation. And when you and I were looking through the book together, what was really nice was that these holes kind of cut out within the book itself give this kind of notion of like a peek into what's coming, but you can't really see. So you're playing with this idea of what you want to reveal and what you want to hide. And I like that in betweenness, which we'll get to later, but it is a prevalent element or aspect in your work, even though you're using the grid to organize and to kind of find meaning within this, like you said, newness or unknown. Or so definitely a very interesting way of integrating the dot grid into Agua Salada. And actually someone's asking, which is was my next question for you anyway. I don't have to do any work today. So how did you decide to use the artist books as a medium to express particular pieces or particular places? Why the artist book as a way of expressing certain ideas versus a painting or versus any other kind of medium, which I know I've asked you before too.
I think the best way to answer that question is like, it was a personal interest already. When I was studying in New World, I actually took a class with an amazing artist and teacher, Carol Todaro. And she is the one who showed me what an artist book was, which I did have no idea. And then I guess also the connection or relationship that has graphic design, because in graphic design you work with a lot of text. There's a lot of typography in it. So I feel like it was a really good way to merge those two worlds, which is the art world and the design world, right? Also, I have a background in printmaking. I did printmaking in Cuba for 4 years. So I feel like everything was falling into place when I decided to create this installation with the artist books. I feel like it was a motivation that was in crescendo, basically. And this was
the culmination.
Yeah.
No, and I see that like the artist books allow you to bring in your background in printmaking, your background in graphic design, your interest in all these things into kind of this
photography as well.
This condensed, very beautiful form that, I mean, your books are artworks within themselves. So it's an interesting medium to.
And another important element I think is also that the books they tend to be very intimate. And I tend to do work that is intimate without even knowing, really. Like, I like small scale works, or I like the use of paper. Like, there's always something intimate or poetic that I don't really, or maybe sometimes intentionally during the process I do it, but it's just like the way that my sensibility as an artist works.
And speaking of the intimacy of the installation, I mean, I asked you because the way that you chose to install or show these books was on a table. And a table is a very particular installation mechanism. It's different than a pedestal. It's different than putting it on in a vitrine. It's so the table, not only the artist books kind of call for this intimacy, but the table, the way that you chose to exhibit the books adds to that, right? Like, it's a space of connection. It's a space of
conversation as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like this installation has brought a lot of conversation, because there's a lot of people that have experienced somehow things like this, especially here in Miami. I mean, so because there's a lot of immigrants from Cuba, but I even remember one of the days that I passed by here at the Bakehouse, I actually encountered two ladies with their kids, and they were from Russia. And they knew exactly what I was talking about in the installation without even telling them. They were like, yes, we totally understand. Like,
yeah, definitely Miami is a city of diaspora.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a city that people come to. So I think that your work is received and understood in a particular way here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it might be read or interpreted differently elsewhere, but Miami has a very particular context and a very particular history that, like you said, someone from Russia could kind of understand what you're trying to express. You know, and at the end of the day, like you said, it's something intimate, it's something human. So there's that connection anyway, right at the basis of it. Like they might not know exactly, but it's understood.
Yeah, there is a message there that goes directly.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So just going back to what we mentioned about this feeling of in-betweenness,
Mm-hmm.
of like kind of inhabiting this liminal space of neither here nor there. How do you kind of express that in each of the books, or can you give us some examples of how, because your installation is called Between Islands and Peninsulas,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
that, you know, even though I see the function of the grid as a way of organizing your thoughts and your emotions and this kind of, difficult emotions, both in Miami and in Cuba and in between, you have a focus on that space of intermediate, like of the intermediate. So could you tell us a little bit about how you express that in each book, and I guess how or why you chose to focus on that in your title.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, could you just talk a little bit more about that for us?
Yeah, of course. I mean, first thing I think, and I have experienced myself, is that when you leave your birthplace, you go to a different place, and you're never going to receive it in the same way that you have received your motherland because you were born there. So I feel like even though if you try to root yourself again in another place, it's never gonna be. It doesn't gonna have the same essence as your motherland had, because that's where you grew up. It's like it's something that you didn't choose, but it just happens naturally, right? So yeah, I feel like throughout the whole installation, there's a lot of nostalgia. Even in the book of Miami, there is nostalgia because I mean I'm 32 years old, and I lived in Cuba for 24 years. I've only lived here for about 8 years. So there's a huge difference there. I have more memories. I have more history in my motherland than here. So I don't know if I'm gonna be feeling the same way when I'm like in my 50s. But for now, that's at the stage that I am. It's like there are some connections that I'm still building and creating here, but I don't feel that this is a place that is rooting me, right? And then the way that I see Cuba right now is like I feel like I think about Cuba, but I think about an old Cuba. I think about the Cuba that I lived. So I think about the past. I am not connected with Cuba anymore either. Like whatever is going on in Cuba, I only hear maybe from my family members who still live in there. But it's not a place where I'm living or experiencing at the moment. So it feels like a big dream, right? I feel like that's how memories kind of like feel to us. They feel like dreams because it's something that is gone. It's not tangible. It's not something that you're gonna recover, right?
Well, and that's the beauty of memory too. That if when we revisit, memory is almost like a visitation of a past event, and it's fluid and it's expansive. So anytime we think of something, it changes a little bit, very slightly, right? So a memory is not fact or exactly what happened, but really our impressions of that. Yeah. And I think you capture that, even in the pages of Todo Sigue Igual, the image of your mother, which I love, it's like blurry. So it's almost like a memory, like a moment in motion, and like it's like the present is passing you by to become the past. It's like encompassing all these like time frames within one image, which I think speaks to that idea of like you know, you're living in the present, but also living in the past, especially when you feel like you inhabit two different places, and the place that you are now, like you said, isn't rooting you, isn't grounding you.
Yeah.
So it's like you said, this in betweenness, and
exactly,
where do I go from here?
Yeah. And I feel that's also shown in the way that the books are presented. They feel like this, like probably islands, because the tables are so big, and there's like these scattered objects, right? So it's everything a little bit isolated in some sense, and also the images and the colors are very opaque, which is something that I was very interested in, except for one main color that only has in one section of the book in Miami, which is red, and it's more like that chalk, right, of when you arrive to Miami. Like the United States is such a big country and like so overdeveloped. So coming from an super underdeveloped country to this massive place, it was like a big shock for sure.
Yeah, you can imagine.
Yeah.
So we have a question. Someone's asking about the selection of materials for the art books and the element of the table and the installation, which we spoke about a little bit already. But the use of materials and materiality to express ideas and emotions was something you and I spoke about a lot. So can you maybe talk a little bit about your selected materials for each book?
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah, so the Book of Cuba, which I already said, it has a cover made out of concrete. So basically the way that book works, I don't know if you remember in the video, there's like this, like a square concrete. That's actually the cover, like the top of the book. So the book, that part is meant to be lifted, right? And then put it on the side, and then you can start like passing the pages. But it's heavy. And it kind of feels like a tomb.
Like a tomb, yeah.
Like a tomb, yeah. Right? So it kind of goes with that emotion of like heaviness, of like the past, of like memories. And so yeah, that was I knew for sure that the Book of Cuba I wanted to do it with concrete, because I was already experimenting concrete before with like transferring. They were mainly used as a surface, so I was creating this like, kind of like fragments of concrete, and I was transferring images from like old family pictures on top of it. So I knew I wanted to work with that. Like I feel like one of the things that of like the materials that really reminds me of Cuba is concrete, because like everything there, even though it's in ruins basically, and like the houses are very like old and very unstable buildings, because you don't know when they're actually gonna fall on you, but everything is made out of concrete. So there's like interesting duality of like a very strong material opposed to this very fragile type of environment where the material is not really maintained, right? And it really creates in you instability. I think one of the things I experienced in Cuba was a lot of instability, and that also happened with the house where I lived, with my mom's house. It was very unstable. There was no privacy. We had problems with the architecture of the house, so there was a lot of that. And of course, those are things that kind of like stay in your memory, especially if you're living that as a child. And then, so the book for the sea, it's made out of wood. I wanted something organic again, besides of working with the circle and the dots. And I wanted something that would feel a little bit more like lightweight and very like horizontal, to kind of like draw that horizon. And it's like a very silent book, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. And then the Book of Miami, I chose plexiglass. I knew I wanted something that would feel a little bit more cheap, and I'm sorry to say that. I feel like it's a book that is very transportable too. Like it's very easy to move to places, which is the same way that I feel when I came. Because once you're out of Cuba, you're like, okay, at least I have freedom of movement, right? And I chose that. Well, along with the books, there are some small objects or sculptural objects, and I chose that because again the architecture in here. I remember when I came to Miami in the apartment where I used to live with my mom and my grandma. I knocked on the walls, and I was like, "Why is it hollow?" Yeah, because it's made out of um oh, I forgot the name.
The walls in your.
Yeah. They're made out of the I forgot.
So you're saying that the walls weren't strong, that they weren't hollow.
No,
that they were hollow.
Exactly,
Like
they were hollow.
Okay. Yeah.
Because here they use a different type of material, right? So yeah, so it was like that.
Yeah. So like sheetrock or like something like that can be easily knocked down.
Exactly. So that was very impressive to me. I was like, okay, I feel like I'm living in like in like a house made out of cardboard. I don't know.
Well, the funny thing about that is that you said that even though the buildings in Cuba were made out of concrete, that you felt this instability and this kind of
plaster. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It just yeah, it went with plaster.
But then there's also that feeling here, but for different reasons, right? Like this feeling of like you said, like you're living in a house made out of cardboard or like
drywall
or drywall, right?
Exactly, drywall.
You know, where I don't know, the instability is different, but it's still there.
One of the objects that I used was drywall with a layer of plaster on top.
The elements that you have around the book itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, so
so it goes with that. Like I knew I wanted the materials to really transmit what you were going to find in the books, and also because I was designing them. You know, a book is an object, and I wanted them to have this very sculptural feeling, where you could like interact with them in different ways, depending in the field, the place that I was talking about.
So we have a question about someone that's actually visited the installation. They say that they approached the books as beautiful art objects. How do you feel about the preciousness of the books? Would you sacrifice the art object aspect to make them more approachable? As a formal book.
Okay. Wait, how do you feel about it?
So I guess what are the challenges or limitations of
I mean, to be honest, this was my first big project, and my first big project with artist books, because I've created artist books before, but I never had them in an exhibition for people like to touch and interact. So this was my first big project where people will interact with the work. And yeah, I mean, I was scared at the beginning because I didn't know, and that was one of the questions that I had myself, and also some like professors that helped me and asked me like, once you put the work out there, it's not yours any longer, right? It's not yours anymore. So whatever happens, you don't have control over it. And I was so afraid of that at the beginning, because I didn't know how people was going to, understand how to work the books, or like how to read them, or like how to just like navigate them. So I don't know. I will have to see. I mean, I do want to continue doing things like this that are like challenging. I like challenge. I don't settle in that way. I really like to keep finding new ways to like, make the viewer try to like reflect or understand what they're looking at. I guess I don't want to give things just easy in that way.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is just that, right, of how the viewer interacts with whatever they consider to be an art object, right? So we're used we're used to being told, stay this far away, don't touch this, don't do this. So then I guess it's a matter of, as you continue your practice, asking yourself, how do I give the viewer the go ahead, the green light to play, like to touch, to interact, to navigate these these books, these things, right? Because a book is created for that. It's created to be touched, to be opened, exactly, to be read. So I guess it's finding, and it's difficult. How do you have?
But I feel like it's also very interesting, like what has happened with this, because the fact that some people are just afraid of opening it, that's already a reaction to it, Like I feel like that's already a reaction that I didn't expect to hear, and it happened. So it's just like different emotional responses to the piece that I feel like they're very interesting, and they probably will help me to understand how I want to keep displaying my work in the future, right? This is like a little, I feel like every exhibition, every work, every art project is like a little experiment that will help you with the next one. And that's how I feel.
I wanted to ask you about something you said before, and maybe it relates back to this idea of how you can interact with the work, but you called, particularly your Agua Salada book, you called them silent books, which I think is so interesting because they have text inside of them, and they have they have a voice, or multiple voices actually in them, and I don't know, I feel like you feel that you feel like these voices, you feel like the depth or the emotion of these words. So when you said, when you called them silent books, what did you mean by that?
Well, the first book that I made was The One of the Sea, and that's when I was started calling that specifically book a silent book, because I mean, the books again, the colors are very opaque. There's nothing too exciting in that sense. I mean, I'm not saying that they're not exciting, but they're like very opaque. It has like this like heavy nostalgia,
muted.
Or like they're very muted, exactly. And because of that word muted, I was like, they're not really like screaming out, right, to you. And yeah, when you read, I mean, you read, but you're not reading out loud normally. Like you're reading to yourself, so it's something that's happening in your head, right, in your conscience. So in that sense, for me, it was like a very silent type of object. And also the book, Agua Salada, it has a lot of pages that only have some texture, but they don't really have much information. And it was also because I was working with the sea. I wanted something that looked like relaxed, where you can only where your eyes will be drawn to these like very pastel colors. Yeah, very calming. And then from there, I was like, okay, maybe I'm just creating silent books, right? To kind of like make you reflect. I don't know if the other ones are called silent book, but it was just an intimate response, between me and my artwork, I would say.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I am going to say that, for me, especially Agua Salada, first of all, you're integrating text or lines from Jose Marti's I Hate the Sea, which is very the language is strong. He hates something, so it's there. And then on top of that, you're not only integrating his text, but you're creating a conversation or a dialogue. So he's, you're asking him questions in English, and he's responding to you through his poem in Spanish. So not only are you creating a conversation and essentially changing the narrative by giving it a different context, but I don't know, it doesn't, in that respect, I guess it doesn't feel silent to me. And, I find it interesting that was the first book you did, because you're working, the sea represents this in-betweenness, but then you're working between you're using two languages, so you're in between languages. It's,
exactly. The Book of Cuba, it's all in Spanish. The Book of the Sea, as she said, it has some questions that I ask in English, and then the responses are parts of the poem of Jose Marti in Spanish. And then the Book of Miami, it's all in English, to kind of create this transition.
Yeah, so I don't know, I just, in that respect, not to disagree with you, but in that respect,
I feel like we as an artist, that sometimes when we're working on something, if we don't have a title, we try to already put a name to the object or something, or at least that happens to me. And because I was working on that book and I was very like serene, like the way that I was working on it, but it was like only like treatment of color sometimes, so there was not really that much noise with like images, right?
Mhm.
So sometimes you only have a page that only has like text, and for me it was like, hey, this is very silent. I don't know.
We'll let people visit and determine that for themselves. So, could you tell us a little bit about how this particular installation relates to your larger practice, and maybe talk a little bit about other artworks that you're doing or you've done recently, just so we have a little bit of context about your practice in general. I know some people have been asking. So do you want me to share screen so you can show some images?
Yeah, that would be perfect. So maybe we can start with.
I'll let you navigate.
Yeah. Sounds better.
Alrighty. So here is your website.
This is my website. Okay. So I think I want to talk about what I did.
Oh, and sorry, this image here is the installation from above.
Exactly.
So to the left-hand side, you have Todo Sigue Igual, and then the two elements of concrete that you've
found objects
that you placed, and you can't see it very well right now, but you had adhered this like thin layer of wax.
No, it's actually transfer images.
Yes, sorry. That kind of is peeling off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then in the middle, in the center table, you have Agua Salada, and then to the right-hand side, you have alternative realities.
Yeah, so, alternative realities.
And then the sheetrock that we couldn't remember the name of.
The drywall.
The drywall, right.
Yeah, so I think I want to talk a little bit of what I did last year, because in between, because I was still working in that case when I worked on those works as well. I was still working with concrete, and that's something that I'm still like practicing. So I did this piece that is called Pause, and of course, as a pause, that's how it felt in quarantine. So I was still exploring the concrete, and I used paper again, some personal text that I wrote during quarantine, just as a reflection of those, weird times, even though we didn't have that much quarantine here in Miami, but but it was more talking about that. And then after this piece, I did two more. Oh, but I don't have this one here. Do you have the pieces that I did here in the Bakehouse? Do you remember?
Images?
Yeah.
I don't know if I do.
Okay. Well, it's okay. No worries, guys. There's more work. Okay, so let me talk about this one. This one is called A Bluebird's Tune, and it's actually a series that I did, and it's based on Emily Dickinson poems. She's an American writer, and it was basically exploring material along with text. So I used some found objects, and then I kind of like arranged them depending on the text that I was like getting from her poems. And I basically use for this one specifically envelope poems, which are like this like little sketch poems that she created personally and but she never really published, and they were actually found later by her sister, and then they were published. So the series is basically this series is actually based on a project that I did for school where I only could use 6 letters. So that's how I would have to like work. I was limited in that sense. And then from there, I would like use objects that would kind of like convey the same message that I was trying to do with the text taken from her poems. But it still has like it kind of intimate, and they kind of look like personal objects. I think like a memoir or something like that, because they are encased in this like shadow box, right? Um, so from the work of graphic design, this is actually one of the last projects that I did, or one of the first ones where I was exploring more text. And this is actually calendar, which is an artist book basically, because each page is super interactive. And this work specifically was actually, I think, like was actually what inspired me to create the books for Between Islands and Peninsulas. So again, I was working with poems. This time I was working with the poems of Burton Rosenberg, which is another American writer. Not really that well known, I think. Um, uh, and um, and then each page, depending on the month, I would select one of his poems. I would write it, and then I would try to convey again with interactive things in the page and text. Um, Conveying whatever he was trying to, say in the text. So as you can see, there's things that you can take out or like reveal. I really like Stranger because it's like a book within a book. So it has this like little tiny book where you can like read more of the text. And this one here, it's like a map. And the poem, this poem was called Destination. So I was working with that, which I think it links to the installation as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. Oh, this one here, I really love because it was working with memories as well. Wish, which it was kind of like emptiness. It was working with emptiness.
Very detailed.
Yes. This is a mirror. There's a mirror in between, so the text is actually opposed. Like you cannot read it because it's not really like facing you. I mean, there's a whole sorry. There's a whole game in the text about facing and not facing you. So I wanted to work with that. And what I did is I flipped the text. I reflected it the wrong way. So when you look in the mirror, you can actually read the text.
And speaking of mirrored substrates, you use that in alternative realities. Yes. So the book expands out.
Yes.
Unlike the other ones that kind of read, from right to left. It expands out, and then the final page has two almost imperceptible flaps, and when you open it, it's a mirrored substrate, and on the little flaps it says, "Where is home?"
Exactly.
So, you're kind of playing with that idea of like your own reflection, finding home within yourself.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, like each book has its unique way of like interacting with it. Like the one of Cuba is like very hard to flip. You actually have to hold the pages to your left because it wants to come back to its place, basically. And then the one from the sea is like very open because it's like a whole like platform, right, with the specs. And then the one of the Miami, it's just like it opens completely, like in a whole full square. So yeah, I was working with very basically shape, right, and the actual physicality of a book, of how we understand, but going further, what we understand that a book should be or should look like. I was trying to work with that. So,
do you want to show as a last work the artist book that you created?
So this is one of the artist books one of the first artist books that I created. It's like a manuscript, an illustrated manuscript, basically. And it has more illustration. It's not as abstract or conceptual, I would say, than what you have seen recently. I also do illustrations, so it's like a way for me to probably distress myself. I don't know, like I feel like that also is tied up to the fact that I did engraving, printmaking, and like I like to illustrate as well. So this one is it kind of looks I remember that Carol Todara, she's like, it looks like a children's book kind of, because you have this name of a part of a body and then you are illustrating that in recreating it in a new way. So it's like parts of the human body, and I have again like the head, the nose, the eye. So it kind of, it's a little bit playful in that sense. And there's like some references to probably what references, probably not. There's some references, two references to like a painting, a really well-known painting, and a film in history, in art history. And what I wanted to say is that this book, along with the print, it's going to be actually in exhibition, hopefully by Friday. And it's gonna be with the Exiles books. So
Exile being another nonprofit organization here in Miami. So you can come and view Amanda's work here at Bakehouse. We are open on weekends from 12 to 5. You can touch the books and you can go through them. And then she's also going to be exhibiting with Exile somewhere in Coral Gables, correct?
It's in the Museum of Coral Gables.
Yeah, and I believe the exhibition is called Subtropical Affair.
Subtropical Affair, and it's through a Good to Know, which is like a group that creates exhibitions, and they come here to Miami to create exhibitions.
Yeah. Great. So I think that brings us into almost an hour. Yeah. We've talked a lot.
Time flies.
I want to thank everyone for joining us. A shout out to all of Amanda's family that has joined us. So thank you all for being here with us today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or Amanda, and please come and see the books if you haven't. You won't regret
it. Thank you so much.
See you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.